And so we're talking about sales funnels here. And when you take a look at a sales funnel, what you see is not what you actually get. So what do I mean by this? A sales funnel is essentially a few pages. You have an ad that takes you to a landing page, that takes you to a lead magnet, that takes you to an email sequence, that takes you to a webinar registration page, or another landing page, or then a sales page. So, that's what you see. But in the background of a really well-built sales system, one that actually converts at every step in the customer's journey, is an invisible methodology, and that informs and contains how each section is created and flows into the next. So you're looking at each separate section singularly, but then how it relates to the next section and the overall concept of the funnel. So this is the process that I follow for each sales system that I build. And so just a little bit of a background. We've had drag and drop templates and platforms, marketing platforms, for the last 10 years or so. And they're easy to use, but what they actually are is just the front end for the design and for the layout. And this is not what converts people. What converts people is what they believe and they feel. And that happens in the back end. So this process that I use, I call my foundational methodology, the conversion code. And it's centered around 5 key pillars. The first one is strategy. The second one is psychology. The third one is the content. The fourth one is design. And the fifth one is the tech. And these are all linked together and intertwined. So, the 5 pillars, they don't operate in silos. They are cross-functional and they are interdependent. And if one of them is misaligned, this messes with the structural integrity of the entire system, which can lead to the system failing, which can cost a loss in revenue. So let's just take a look at each of these separately. When it comes to strategy, your strategy is mapping out the vision for your sales system. And there's quite a few elements within here, because from your strategy, the information that you've gathered there is what informs the rest of the funnel, or the rest of the pillars within the funnel: the psychology, the content, the design, and the tech. You start with your objective. What is the purpose of this funnel? What am I trying to achieve? What's my goal? The second thing I look at is avatar. And I go really deep here with my avatars. That's not how you spell avatar. And with my avatars, not only are we sort of looking at, sort of the demographics, so say, as an example, my avatar is male, 40 plus, he works in corporate, he's sick of corporate, and he wants to start his own online business. So when I'm looking at my avatar, I first look at, what problem is he struggling with? She, they. What problem are they struggling with? What problem are they trying to solve? What are they doing to try and fix a problem? What mistakes are they making when they're trying to fix the problem? What actually are the results of that they're achieving in trying to fix their problem? What emotional toll is this taking? What is the deeper desire that they're looking for? It's sort of beyond money or growth. What do they actually want? And if you can dig down to that level, then that will help define everything else. That's your leverage point. I then take a look at beliefs, because they need to believe that your solution is going to help them get the results that they're looking for. If they don't believe that, then they're not going to take you on as a coach or whatever product service that you're offering. There are actually two different types of beliefs. There are the current beliefs that they have, and these are the beliefs that are keeping them stuck where they are. And then there's the beliefs that they need to have to be able to move from where they are to where they want to be. And I call that the belief gap. And this is the single biggest belief shift required to actually move them through to your solution. I then take a look at awareness. So what I mean by that is, where are they starting from? Are they unaware that they've got a problem? Or is he problem aware? Or is he solution aware? People are at different awareness stages, when they're in a problem. They could be attached to the wrong solution. Being aware of where they're at, there needs to be one central belief that will move people. So you might ask yourself, for my audience to buy, they must believe that. And so what is it that they must believe? Because that's where you're leading them to. You're leading them to believing that whatever you're offering is the solution to their current dilemma. The next thing I look at is, sort of the funnel type. So what I mean by this is, the funnel's got to fit the offer and the journey you're taking somebody on. If all your objective is to just generate leads, then all you need is a lead generation funnel. You don't need to go any deeper or any more complex than that. But if you are, sort of selling a high ticket item that requires a whole bunch of different steps, that becomes a lot more complicated, a lot more automation, a lot more steps, and a much wider awareness of how you can move somebody from the beginning to the end of that funnel. I then take a look at the messaging by funnel stage. So why I do this is because what they're thinking and feeling and believing at the top of the funnel is completely different from that's bottom of the funnel. At the bottom of the funnel, once they reach the bottom of the funnel, they know how they're going to move forward, those sorts of things. So at the top of the funnel, you're sort of trying to disrupt a belief or an assumption that people might have. So how you speak to that is going to be completely different from how do you speak to people who are in the middle of the funnel, who are at the point where they are considering what their options are. They're looking at alternatives, sort of become a lot more aware of what kind of solutions they're looking for, those sorts of things. And so at this point, they're at the reframing stage. And then at the bottom of the funnel, you've got the solidify phase, where you're providing proof that strengthens their conviction that they're onto the right solution. At each step, we're trying to identify what is the belief shift that I need to make. So at the top of the funnel, they believe something. Where do I need to get them to? What's the belief shift for them to get into the middle of the funnel? And the same thing again. What is the belief shift from where they're currently at to getting to the point where they are ready to make a decision because they're now certain of the direction that they're going? I then map out the psychological journey. The psychological journey is about is understanding what they believe before they click, understanding what resistance must be removed, understanding what shifts they need to make to get through to the end of the funnel. They're the little triggers and tricks that helps remove the friction that may stop people from moving forward. It just feels like the right fit for them to just keep on moving to the next step. And then the final thing that I do with building my strategy is I do a final alignment check. And what this means is that I, sort of make sure that the messages are going back to the core belief that I need them to believe. I also make sure that I'm speaking to one specific person. So I have my avatar, I understand, their problem solutions, sort of mistake, all that kind of stuff that they have. And I don't deviate off that. I'm quite specific about who my avatar is. And I check that each stage does shift the beliefs forward. And I know I keep going on about beliefs, but believing something is feeling something. And if people don't feel and believe that it's right to move to wherever, then they don't do it. And so it becomes really important for us to be able to understand what they are so that we can actually talk to them in that language. Your funnel structure should match the levels of awareness that people are at. So say, for example, you're talking to people at the top of the funnel in a particular way, you're talking to people in the middle of the funnel in a particular way, you're talking to people at the bottom of the funnel in a particular way. And your call to actions should be ready to match the buyer at where they're at. And so this kind of leads you to wanting to solve the root cause of the problem. What's really causing this feeling of dissatisfaction or overwhelm or malfunctioning or depression or whatever it is that they're feeling, whatever problem they're dealing with. And you're not just dealing with the surface symptoms. Okay, so the next thing that I come to is the psychology. And this is a bit different. Where am I going here? The understanding of the psychology is built out of what you've developed in your strategy. There's one thing that I really focus on, and a lot of people do, is, and you probably have heard this before, but the rule of one. And with a sales system is not a website. A sales system, it's a system to make sales. And so with the rule of one, if you're running a campaign for something, say, for example, you're a chiropractor and you're running a campaign on spinal realignment or something like that. And when they click on the ad, they get sent to your website page. And your website page has 10 or 12 other services that you provide. And your spinal realignment is just one of these ones. And so your visitor is going to look at that page and go, oh, okay. Then they will probably go clicking around the place and have a look at what's there, not find, immediately the bit about spinal realignments. And so then they'll bounce, they'll go somewhere else. And the difference between that and a sales funnel is if they land on your landing page in a sales funnel, the only thing that they can do if they want to move forward is to fill in the form for book an appointment or a consultation or something like that. That's it. And the thing that you're trying to do here, if it's obviously to a cold audience, is to capture their name and email. Once you've got their name and email, you can then start talking about all your other different services and stuff like that. But in the first instance, you're focusing on what has driven them to your page. So that's the rule of one. The second thing is, and I just talked about this a second ago, is on a website, you've got header menus, you've got footer links, you've got social icons that are, pulling your traffic away from, what you want them to do. And so every time somebody clicks on one of those links, that's a leak in your funnel. They've gone. If you have some kind of product you're selling, you need to make sure that your checkout is as simple and as clean as possible. If you make it too complicated, every step you have in the funnel, in the checkout form, is another step that people have to go through, and it gives them another opportunity to have second thoughts about what they're doing. They may come back, chances are they won't. So, for example, if you've got a form with fields in it, you really don't want to have more than 3 or 4 fields max, unless you're trying to qualify like high ticket leads, where you may want to ensure that tire kickers don't make it through, and you need more information about whether the visitor qualifies or not. You also want to have persistent CTAs. Let me say it again, because I said that quite quickly. You also want to have persistent CTAs. So throughout your sales funnel, you don't want to just have you don't just want to have one call to action button at the top and another one at the bottom, because they might get halfway down your page and go, don't think this is for me, and click away, and they never actually got to your bottom call to action. If you've got it all through the funnel, then you're giving people multiple opportunities to click that button and move on to the next step. So all sorts of little things there. So what am I talking about? Checkout, CTAs. Whoops, CTAs. Another one is what we call price anchoring, and you may have heard of this one as well. It's a very common psychological, it's not a trick, it's just helps put your value into perspective. So say, for example, you might be selling a course, it's $9.97. You may offer it at $9.97, or like split it into 2 payments. And so your visitor is looking at that going, $9.97, that's actually quite a lot. But if you anchor that pricing with something in your text somewhere that says, normally this course would be sold at $2,997, but for the next 3 days only, as a special, I don't know, Black Friday offer, for the next 3 days, they're going to get it at a discounted price. Then they're like, wow, I'm getting almost 2/3 of this. That's a pretty good deal. And so that's called price anchoring, where you're actually letting people know what the real value is of what you are offering. Other things are like guarantees, refund policies, which are things like, trust badges and media logos, badges of, say, other clients that you've worked with. And that's just touching on them. There's all sorts of different things that we can use inside the funnel that really help people not only shift their beliefs in terms of what they can achieve, but also build trust for you, build authority for you, and make people, once they get to the end of their funnel, feel like what you are offering has got to be the best solution for them. Okay, let's get into some content here. And I'm not going to go into, how to write copy or anything like that. But what I will say here is that your content is derived from the information that you've gathered in your strategy. And that information should provide you with all sorts of like really good ideas in terms of what you can talk about and how you're going to bring your person from unaware to aware to interested to belief to desire to taking the action that you want them to take. So your content, just on the surface level of it, your content is derived from your customer journey, and each part of the content is going to have the sort of following structure. And we do this because it makes it easier for people to see what you're about, who you're talking to, what problem you solve, what solution you might have, is it for them, that sort of thing. So you have your headlines, you have your paragraphs, you have your bullet points, you have your before and after things, you have, what your program is, how it's delivered, program delivery, what they need to do, what they're going to get out of it. You're going to have all the way through here CTAs and images and or graphs or it really depends on what your product and service is, but things that really support your storytelling and the customer journey that you're taking people on. You're going to have your pricing and your price anchoring. You're going to have things like your objections, and these can be written into any of your copy. They don't have to be frequently asked questions section, and objections that you don't address are reasons that people won't buy. Objections come out of your strategy. It's one of the things you look at, and I didn't actually list it there, but it is. And being able to address those so that when people do actually get to the point where they're considering whether to purchase or not, their objections have been answered. And so they don't become an issue. So what else are we looking at? Sort of you guarantees. People want everything to be risk-free. So, what guarantees can you provide? What, authority can you show? Testimonials. So all these things make up the content of your funnel system. And as I said, it's derived from the information you've gathered at your strategy. Moving on. Let's get rid of all this. Design. Design is really important, and people don't put as much emphasis on design as they should, I believe. Their funnels aren't working, and so they're busy changing headlines and tweaking copy and trying to fix their offer, which they think might be broken, all sorts of things. But the design is it's actually one of the psychological aspects of your funnel system, because the design is something that people they like it or they don't like it. The design makes things really easy to read, really easy to understand, it's presented in a clear and concise manner. It helps lead the visitor from one section through to the next section without any kind of sort of friction or hesitation. The design is built around the brand that you either have built or want to build. It's about the fonts that you're using. It's about the colors that you're using. And at each step of the funnel, and this is really important, is that you'll start with some traffic generation, some ads, some posts, whatever it is, and you'll bring people into a landing page. That landing page needs to feel like it is the sister of the ad. It needs to be in the same family. It needs to look and feel the same, have the same tone, all that sort of stuff. If it's different, then people think that they've ended up on the wrong place, or it's not what they expected it to be. And that causes friction, and that causes people to bounce out again. And they decide they're going to opt in, they get the lead magnet. The lead magnet feels like it needs to be part of the family. It can't be something completely different, because that's not what they signed up for. That's not what they expected. So it's really important that the look and the feel and the tone and the wording and everything is all aligned. So they've got their lead magnet. They end up on your email list. They start getting some emails about your products and services. And again, you want to make sure that you're following a sequence, that each email builds on the one before. You know, you don't want to sort of go straight to, in your first welcome email, to buy my stuff, and then go back in the second email to something completely unrelated. It doesn't work that way. So uh, you've got your email sequence, and the last one then leads into your, you know, webinar offer, registration page, sales page, whatever it is. And again, it needs to feel like it's all part of the same family. So it's all about, you know, sort of leading and consistency and looking good and being readable, being able to move people well without any resistance, no resistance, you know. And you look at a good funnel or a good sales page and you look at a bad one, you can really notice a difference. And you might have the best headlines, copy, call to actions, offer, whatever it is in the world, and the design sucks. That makes it really, really hard still. You know, you're not going to get the same conversion if you've got all those things, great headline, great offer, etc., and a really great design that really pulls people in and takes them through to the offer. It's going to make a huge difference. So that leads on to the last piece, which is our tech. And there's really just sort of two different sections here that I want to talk about in the tech. So the tech, there's two parts to it. There's the external tech, which is, you know, external, which is, you know, the platforms and the apps that you're using. And I find a lot of the time, this is actually quite a good example. I'm in a group, which is a fantastic group. They're great. And the guy teaches like business mentoring, and he's got all these incredible tools and all that sort of stuff. And he's been doing this for like 10 or 15 years, whatever. And he uses, you know, specific software for, you know, checkouts, for landing page building, for hosting his programs on, for CRM, for his, you know, email blast and stuff. So he's got a separate piece of software, and it's all connected together, and it's all great, and it works fine for him and all that sort of stuff. And so you get people coming on and they're saying, oh, you know, we've been told to use this and we've been told to use that, and this is really expensive and I'm not really sure about it. And, you know, and my opinion is do your research, use what you need. Don't go buying something just because somebody else has been using it for 10 years. Use what works for you. I mean, if somebody else is using a platform that's full of a whole bunch of features that you'll never use and it's costing a fortune each month, well, I wouldn't do that. I find that the actual tech that's going to work for you. And one of the things that's actually happening at the moment is that you've got your, you know, sort of marketing platforms that actually have a, you know, they're all in one, and they cover most of the stuff that you need. And, you know, I mean, I have my recommendations on what I'd choose, but it's also moving towards more customization. Customization. And with AI, it's now possible to actually build your own platforms, to host your own courses, to have your own, you know, memberships, host your own memberships, host your own videos, host, you know, sort of build your challenges and all this sort of stuff. And it's actually something that we have been looking into for about the last 6 months in terms of being able to build a platform that is customized to the needs of the business, what they actually need, and not trying to duct tape together a whole bunch of different types of software that may or may not actually do what you want it to do, and leading to all sorts of frustrations, etc., etc. So just keeping that in mind, the external tech that you want to use, just make sure that you're getting something that works for your business and for you, not just because somebody else recommends it. Then you have the internal tech, which is all your automations into internal. My writing's getting worse and worse, isn't it? Internal. And this is things like your automations that will automatically take a person from, clicking on their ad through to your landing page. They fill out the opt-in, the information automatically goes to your CRM. They automatically get sent the first thank you email that automatically delivers the lead magnet, and then they're already automatically onto your email list that takes them through to the offer. And a part of all that is being able to tag and and the triggers. So what's going to trigger an automation, and tagging a particular action so that you know who's done what and when and those sorts of things. There's also workflows, and workflows is really building out, if somebody does this, then do that. If somebody does that, then do this. So like, say, for example, somebody might get to the end of your sales funnel, and do they buy? Yes. Do they not buy? No. And so these people will go off on one track. These people will go off another track. There are different stages within the awareness stage. They are at different places in the funnel. And so you are able to talk to them where they're at. So your automations are really important to get right, and can be as complicated or as simple as they need to be. And so that's really it. But, I guess coming back to the point that I'm making is that what you actually see on the surface is not what you're actually getting. Whoops. What you're actually getting is, sort of uh, a full-blown strategy, so you know exactly how to map things out. You're getting, sort of psychology built in to funnels. You're getting your content written based on the psychology, based on the strategy. You're getting your design built based on, psychology and conversion-led tactics and those sorts of things. And the tech is all comes together. You can either have it custom built, we can use existing, apps, or, whatever works for you. And then all the automations and everything are all done for you. So sorry, that's ended up a great big hot mess, but that's it. So I hope that was helpful. As I say, what you see is not what you get. You get a hell of a lot more. Cheers. Bye.